You're listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today I'm here with Vernon Brown. Vernon has touched the lives of thousands of executives to increase employee engagement, as well as entrepreneurs who have doubled their business beyond six figures and has helped save countless personal relationships in the process. While helping clients find and sustain their happiness, his biggest challenge is instilling these life lessons on his young son, Logan. Vernon strives to create change and fulfillment from within, no longer allowing others to feel as he did at a very young age as an outcast. I love that message, Vernon. And I know we had just talked. So first of all, thank you for being here today.
I really appreciate you giving me the space to, to talk, to connect with you, with just your people, and just share the positive, share the hope, share the love.
I love it. It's a powerful message, and I love sharing hope with the world. So one of the first things we ask is if you share your story of hope. So you've got the floor. I would love to hear your story.
Okay. I'm going to share a story that's very near and dear to my heart because it's my story. I'm always reminding people, never judge a book by its cover, right? Like never look at someone and assume that you know what they've been through. And I say all this to say it's because, taking you back to a time far long ago, it was, when I was growing up, it was me and my sister, she's 2 years older than me. And then there's my brother who's 9 years younger. We call him the oops baby. And growing up in a single family household, my mother worked very, very hard. She made sure that we had, even though we didn't have, we had the best opportunities in school, even though we might not have had the power on. We had, the best just opportunities, but we kind of hid behind a background with the fact that we were homeless and that we were poor and that, things were just really tough. And I remember being a kid and just even before my brother was born, I'm like, is this all life is struggling and worrying and stress? And I think what really got me was when I found out what eviction was, which kind of led to being homeless because, you hear the word eviction, but you don't feel it, right? Like you go to a door and all your stuff is laying out front, like everyone can see. And so that was like the first time that life really hit me. And I wasn't even 7 or 8 years old. And, we got another place, we're trying to do better, trying to fit in. But, I'm kind of that neurological cranium type of guy. So I'm reading like medical journals, right? Because my mom's RN. And ladies love when you read medical journals. So I didn't fit in there. And, I'm getting off the bus, I had a really tough day. And that's when I found out what kidnapping was. There was a guy in my driveway who tried to kidnap me. And it was one of the scariest moments I've ever been through because you hear about it. But I remember this guy just opened up a door and said, get the blank in the car. And you kind of freeze because you're like, is this surreal? I mean, is this real? It is surreal. And I just remember running across the field. We live right next to this garden. And I was screaming, I was waving my hands. Fortunately, thank heavens, somebody saw me and a few other cars saw me and they pulled over. Got spit off. And this is when the story gets even better. And it's like, before 10, you see these things. And, another definition I really got, sidelined with was when I found out what rape was. Seeing your mother rape is not something that anybody should ever see. And it just did things to my brain, it just kind of put me in this place where, and I'm on the foot of life. I'm on the butt of life as are things going to get better? And, I'm thinking all these things and you got to go to school. There is no, you talk to a counselor, they tell you there's something wrong with you. I would talk to the counselors at school and they would say that, I know they meant well, but for them to say, hey, guess what? This is what you have to look forward to. You're 10 times more likely to be a felon by the time you turn 18. I'm like, what kind of hope is that, right? And, it's a true story, but it does have a very happy ending. So stay tuned. And I just remember trying to navigate those, like that social circle. You're like 8th, 9th grade. And I remember being on the bus. And drawing was always this big thing for me. It's how I got through so many different things in life. Just kind of being in your own space. Nobody bothers you when you're poor. And people don't bother you too much when you're quiet. So I just learned to do that. But I remember I was on the bus and I saw like this piece of paper fly by the window. And it kind of like broke me up out of a trance. And I realized like, wait, that's my artwork. and the bus drops me off. And I realized we got evicted again. All of our stuff is lying in the streets. But this time, everybody at the school sees it. And I don't know if anybody's ever experienced anything like that, even come close to it, any type of loss of that magnitude. It, the word humiliating doesn't sell it. It doesn't, and there's not any words in human vocabulary taken encompass like what you feel. And I felt lower than life. And, you're living in a car and everyone knows that you don't have a home, and it was just tough. And unfortunately, my grandmother took us in, and I had to make a tough decision, a few months later, because my mom said, well, I'm back on my feet. I'm ready to go. And I had to make a decision to let my mom go and my sister and brother go and stay with my grandmother. And I'm very blessed that I made that decision to stay with my grandmother, because that's when life really started turning around. Because she just instilled a lot of values in me. My mother, I love her to death. She did some great, incredible things for me. But my grandmother really, passed the baton, so to speak, and let me know that you don't have to worry about life. You don't have to worry about power bills. You don't have to worry about safety. You don't have to worry about her mom's boyfriend coming and beating you up. And I was about 16 then. And when I graduated, I was 5'10", 170 pounds. I just was this awkward duck too. You're doing art classes, you're reading these medical journals, you just this outcast. And this is how I know life has a sense of humor. I was 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, and I was 5'10", on you. And out of nowhere, my pants you start seeing more of my ankles. And I'm like, what's going on? And I shot to 6'4" over summer. And I put on a lot of good weight. And I got up to 220. And that's when life really took off for me. It wasn't the physical, it was the awareness that how I was brought up didn't have to be how I was going to live my life. And once I kind of grew into this body and figured out like, oh, life can change. It's always an evolving thing, right? Because I'm thinking like, you're 18, you're done. I'm going to prison, right? I didn't even do anything. I know I'm going to prison. That's what the counselor did to me, scared me. And I just remember it was just like this big nuance. I'm like, wow, I can do what I want. And it wasn't that I wanted to chase a bunch of women. I wanted to chase, a bunch of money. It's like, I wanted to build me. And so I was just quiet. So I said, what's the fastest way I can get to know people? What's the fastest way that I can like impact the most people, but also get the incentive of learning? I said, be a bartender. And so what I did was, and this is again, another, gift of life, to talk about hope, because there's no suffering without any reward. And it's the gift of long suffering. Those tough circumstances and those horrific things I had to go through that I'm very thankful for, they were tough, but they gave me this intuition. Because when you know somebody's about to attack you, about to hurt you, about something's not right, you develop almost a sixth sense about actions. And how that translates with bartending is people want to feel felt. And when they know that you've got their whatever drink and it's taken them forever, and you look at them and say, you're going to love this, I promise you. All the cherries are, I've licked them all. And they just start laughing. And I could see where people were stuck at. And I just started like excelling there. It's easy. You talk about an incentive, right? The difference between a $100 tip or a $4 tip, just using your personality. And it's not that I was any better than anybody, but I knew how to connect with people. And from there, I said, hey, I challenged life, and I got my personality really blossomed. And I said, what else can I do to really prove life wrong or take more control of my life? And, I was told I was a skinny, fat, ugly kid. I said, one guy said, you should be a model. I said, absolutely not. Vernon doesn't do cameras. And I said, oh my God, I'm doing this. So I challenged it. I said, let me shoot some pictures. And I shot them up to New York, because my whole thinking was, if I'm not going to succeed in something, it's not because I'm going to do it in Richmond, right? I want the people up top to tell me. So I sent some to 16 agencies in New York. And I remember 15 of them said no. And one said yes. And that's all I needed, just that one. And I'm big on that. If I can get an opening, I got you. And in my family, being, we had our financial struggles. We don't fly. So I'm 25, 24 years old. And my dad, he came back into my life a little bit later. And I remember he drove me to the airport and he shook my hand like I was going to die. And he's like, good luck, son. I won't see you again. And I remember that because I'm like, what? Who has a send off like that, right? But me and my dad, we talk every day. But fortunately, I didn't die. But I got off that plane Wednesday, got back on the plane Sunday, and I think I was, a couple days later, next thing you know, the bookings started coming in. And that's, again, just really took off. And I did that for about 2 to 3 years in New York, and I had a fantastic time. I had some great experiences. You know, I didn't see Madonna. I sat next to Madonna on set. I didn't see Don Cheadle. I talked to John Cheadle on set. I didn't see Brendan Fraser. I was talking with him and joking with him. I'm not saying that to impress anybody. I'm just saying it's like when you go after stuff and you're bold about it, you'd be amazed how you get rewarded for it, you know? And then so it's like one of those big principles for me, a big tenet for me, actually. You got to be bold. And so how it, it just taught me times can be tough, but you got to find a way to win. And I'm not trying to say that it's something that's going to come and you're going to have this great epiphany one day. You're going to have this great, you know, an intuitive, you know, message that comes to you. But just because it started that way doesn't mean it needs to end that way.
I love that. I feel like you wrote your own story, right? You didn't let all those circumstances write your story for you. You chose to write your own story and live your life. So I love that you've taken all of those and moved in such a positive direction with it.
Oh yeah, it's all about that. And thank you for that. I appreciate you allowing me to tell my story.
Well, I want to know how that story, because obviously you went through different phases. And I think being a bartender is everybody's counselor, right? It's our coach, it's our counselor, it's like our marriage, you know, coordinator. Yep. So I love that's where you realize like, hey, I connect well with people. This is my zone. Like I'm a people person. How did you move that into what you're doing now?
So it's, you know, it's such a great question. When I got done, like being in the entertainment world, again, I'm just that quiet. I'm the nerd. Okay, I'm the guy. And true story, I'm building computers on a weekend. I'm just doing all these nerd things. I'm playing video games, and like what I looks like, not who I am. And a lot of that success came from my personality. And when I recognized the gap with people wanting to connect with people, I said, "There's something there." And so I got with a mentor. And I told him, I was 29, 30 at the time. And I told him, like, I don't know what I want to do, right? And he said, well, what you can do anything. I'm like, I don't feel that way. But he told me that you should consider doing life coaching. And at the time, I'm like, dude, I don't even know what that was. I'm like, I don't know what that is. It doesn't even sound sensational. It doesn't sound sexy to me, right? And being the great mentor that he was, he pushed me. He said, you should do it. And every time I saw him, he would say, you should do it. And I started getting annoyed. And just like, let me just look before I figure out what I'm saying no to, you know, because I thought I knew everything, but you know, I'm going to someone who knows, they're telling me, I'm telling them no. But I looked into it and I was like, okay, I see what he's saying. And I just remember, the conversation I told him. I was like, I don't know anything about life. And he just looked at me and said, you know, Vernon, you lived many lives already. And that's when I really sat back and it really hit me. I just remember it kind of floored me. I remember I looked back and I just started thinking about things that I've been in my life, and not that I'm any better than anybody, not that, you know, that I stand on the shoulders of giants, but I just experienced so much life at that pace early on, and to be able to transform that, just recognize there was so much positive in it. And I started realizing, just looking at all the connections I made with people from bartending to modeling, you know, to acting, it wasn't what this looked like. It was the energy they got from me. And for me, that's when What You're Happy was born, because for happiness, for me, that's what happiness is. It's energy. And I said, What You're Happy? And boom, that's been 7 years now.
So what kind of advice would you remind me a lot of Brett Lockett. I had him on my show. He's a former NFL player. And I remember him asking to be on the show. I'm like, well, we share stories of hope on the show. He's like, yeah, I got one. And I'm like, okay, come on and share it. And I was blown away. And one of the things I asked him, which is something I really want to ask you, is what would you say to people right now going through where they're being told, like, you can't do this, you'll never do that, or like your percentage of becoming a felon is, and being put in a mold that they don't belong in? What would your advice to them to be to like step out in that uncomfortable comfort zone? Because believe me, success is super uncomfortable. Me doing a podcast, a lot of people know that I had a stroke, and even speaking was very hard for me again. And I get out there and use my voice every single day. And so what are some of the things that you would look back and tell maybe your younger self, or those coming up thinking, I can't do this, I just don't have that in me?
And again, another world-class question. You know, it's a couple things. Don't become your struggle or other person's convictions. there's many times that, I mean, I know you had this experience where you're not quite sure what you can even do yet, because we're all evolving every day, right? Like we all have a superpower, and sometimes those superpowers are unbeknownst to other people and even to you. So you got to recognize, give yourself a chance. Um, and I think this, another thing I would say is you have to get curious about life. Sometimes life purposely does things to see if you really want it. For an example, I always let people know, whenever you're leveling up in life, you tend to go through some uncomfortable experiences. Maybe someone's putting you down. Maybe someone's saying you can't do it. That's life saying, do you really want it? Let me just see if you really want it. And that's a big mantra for me. It's like, do you really want it? And the answer for me has always been yes, but you got to be bold. And I think that's the last thing. You have to be bold in everything that you do. I'm not saying being rude. I'm not saying be, cocky or arrogant, but you have to be bold. To step out and do something that people have never thought possible for you, that's bold. The worst that could happen is that you become a different person who's bolder. You don't lose.
I love that. So what are the types of people that you're working with now? Because you were telling us that you're doing modeling, life coaching, acting. What is it that you're really focusing on right now?
Yeah, with modeling and acting, I kind of retired from that several years ago. It's just it was time to turn that page over for me in life. So right now, it's just 100% focused on just coaching and doing teaching workshops on owning your happiness. And I tend to work with persons who tend to kind of have that entrepreneurial passion, right? Because you have got to be a bold person to say, look, I had a stroke and I'm doing a podcast. Like it takes a special type of person to put themselves out there. And I've just found myself, through a lot of different clients' experiences that, my people are in the entrepreneurial spirit.
I think you're the perfect person to have on the show right now because people are finding themselves becoming entrepreneurs, even though that maybe they have been raised in that sort of mentality where you work for somebody 9 to 5. And COVID has shifted our thought process on what is possible for us out of desperation, right? My mom always told me, if you want something bad enough, you've got to be hungry for it. And when COVID hit, people got hungry. Like, what am I going to do? They got scared. They got hungry. And so I think you'd be an amazing coach for helping people with that pivot in their life, getting out. Like, I want to be an entrepreneur. These are my skills. This is my idea. And how do I make that happen? Is it even possible?
Thank you for saying that. I think the big key from entrepreneurship for me is it's not a mental game for me. It's an emotional game. And I find more entrepreneurs get stuck in their emotions, and emotions are great things. We need those. They allow us to feel. However, when you start noticing they kind of dominate in your actions, a lack of actions, it's when you first started year one for me, I remember I was like, oh my gosh, it was like overload. Like, oh, I'm responsible for all this. And you're like, oh my gosh, hold my hand. And like the third or fourth year, it's not that, the problems change. Your emotions have just become so conditioned to say like, okay, well, I'm smart enough to figure it out. Entrepreneurship is about mastering those emotions and making you think. And that's one of the things I am amazing at. And I say that, very modestly, but I get you to think. And that's where people get stuck. It's in their thoughts. And when those thoughts are dominating your actions, I mean, that's when people, really kind of, they get stuck.
I agree. I feel like when I get in my head on something, it's like a bone with a dog and I can't ever get past it because it's so up in my head. So 100%. What are if somebody was coming to work with you as a coach, what are 3 quick little tips that you can give the listeners right now that they can make action on right now? They can take action on it and start moving in a better direction.
Perfect question. All right. So one of the first things is this, and I ask everybody, every audience this, and it always, stay tuned. What have you been doing for fun? I'll ask people that. And I'll say, raise your hand. What have you been doing for, do you know what makes you happy? And what have you been doing for fun? And everyone throws their hand up. And then I'll say, hey, I need to qualify this. Keep your hand up if it applies. It can involve buying or spending. It can involve food or alcohol, and it only can involve yourself. And everybody's hands drops. And I'm saying this because not to be anecdotal or anything, but what happens is when we're working on something, we're excited, when we're working on things in life, and life is being life, right? Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're mid-level, sometimes you're down, whatever it may be. One of the first things that goes is fun. fun is one of the first things that needs to stay on your calendar, no matter what. It sounds completely asinine, but when you're in that place where you're not working on a problem and you just are there present, you're walking in the woods, you're drawing, I'm playing with my son, you're just doing these things, that's when the answers tend to come to you. And that's when you can free yourself up to think. So the first thing I would say is we got to make sure that you're having fun. No buying or spending, no food or alcohol, and it only can involve yourself. Those big three are important because they all require external. Buying or spending, you don't want credit card problems. Food or alcohol, nobody wants to gain any more weight after COVID, right? And by yourself, you don't want your happiness depending on your spouse or your kids or something like that, because what if they go to the store one day or your kids go to college? You're by yourself. What do you do? The second thing I would do is it's kind of hard to rank these. Make sure that you are letting people in your life know that you love them. And especially your kids. And I say this because one of my big rituals for me is I let my son know that I love him every single morning. And I kiss him, I call him Mr. Handsome. He gets mad. He's 6 years old. Like, stop saying that, Dad. But it's amazing when you're checking in with the people who check on you and checking in with your circle, how much fuller a life you have. And that might not be the message a lot of people want to hear, but there's no point in you working to buy a yacht if you're going to be by yourself on it. It doesn't make any sense. And I see it, so often when they kind of on the tail end of things, you have these big McMansions, you got these big this and big that, but it's like you don't trust anybody, you didn't check in. It only takes a second. Bonus points if you make a phone call. Remember, you like them, call them. And also make sure you set your kids up to have a nice, positive, self-esteem. And I think the third thing is be appreciative for what you have and what you don't have. Everything comes with a price. I see so many entrepreneurs that want to have, $3 and $4 million income. Don't forget, some of those come with $3 or $4 million problems. And sometimes you'll see people, they do make a large, sums of money, but they have those problems sometimes come with those too. It's not to say if you make a lot of money, it's be a lot of problems, but be appreciative for what you have. And then the second man, be appreciative what you don't have, because you never know what it's like to have that. And, the circumstances and situations that come with it.
You're one of my favorite influencers, like my favorite type of influencers, because you understand the importance of cultivating our relationships, right? Because at the end of the day, I promise you, because I've been there, there's no one laying on their deathbed saying, I wish I had worked harder. Wow, I wish I had done better on that report. It's like, I wish I had really reached out and touched the people I love and made that connection. So my kids are much older than yours. Mine are from 42 to 35, I think, with tons of grandkids. But I get up every morning and I do not start my day without reaching out to each and every one. Just saying, hey, baby girl, I love you. Hope you have a great day. My kids hear from me every single day. If they don't, and I get busy in the morning and forget, they're on the phone. What's going on?
It's so important. I just remember, imagine, when I was growing up, I didn't get a lot of that, but I just think, and I'm very fortunate from my beginnings, even though there were some struggles there, but I just imagine, what if your mom, dad, aunt, whoever was, parental figure said, you're amazing. Just picture he feeling that. And wow, yeah, because I say this because, oftentimes our fears, our phobias, our whatever we have aren't from us. It's what someone put into our head. We all are born the same way, naked, dumb, and speechless, right? But it's we learn everything along the way. We need to teach, it's important to teach that at home.
It is we're influencers, right? Everybody's influencers. Some people are on more of a massive platform. But if you look around your home, you'll see the most important things you're influencing: your spouse, your friends, your children, your grandchildren.
Yes.
So everything you do and say is influencing them some way. And like you said, that gets in our brain at a very young age, and it creates boundaries and limiting beliefs in our children.
Yes.
And so it's okay. One of the things I talk about all the time is telling my one daughter she couldn't play football. She came with the form. She wanted to play high school football. And I'm like, oh, hell no. Girls don't compete with boys. That's not okay. But I put that limiting belief in her head that she could never compete against the opposite sex because it wasn't appropriate. Would I've done it again? Hell yeah. I did not want my daughter playing football with boys, but maybe I would have explained it differently.
But see, that's the thing. It's oftentimes we have great intentions, right? It's I don't want you hurt. I don't want, any harm to come to you. And it's the thing about parenting is there are lots of handbook and opinions on it, but it's just one of those things where I wish I hadn't said that. I can't say I haven't had those moments, but I do know that the positive definitely really reinforces the negative. So even if you do say something that you wish you hadn't have said, and I've said some things to my son, it's not like I'll say, oh, you're worthless or anything like that. I'm like, man, I should have said it that way, right? Because we have a big rule about can't. We're not allowed to say that in here.
Yeah.
And I said the word can't one day. He was like, oh. I was like, oh, I should not have said that. Why did I say that? But I just moved as a teacher. I'm just like, this is why we don't use that word. It doesn't make you feel very good, does it? I was like, and Daddy made a mistake, which was a lesson in itself. I'm not perfect, and I don't ever want him to, come and have that belief that I am. We think our parents are superheroes, right?
I sure thought mine were. I remember we weren't allowed to say can't either, but there was no such word in the dictionary, and we weren't allowed to say bad. If we did something wrong, our parents always told us that was an ugly thing to do because they believed beauty was what we did, not how we looked. So if we did something wrong, it wasn't like you're bad. It was like, that's not a very pretty thing to do, or that's an ugly thing to do to someone. And because they wanted us to know that how we treated others was how, if we were beautiful or not, right? It's the things we did for others. But yeah, we couldn't use those words either.
Well, the first people I know I've met who knows about the can't rule.
Yeah, there is no such word.
No such thing. That's like cussing. I mean, like, what did you just say?
Oh my gosh, I think you're phenomenal, and I'm going to put all of your information where people can connect with you in our show notes because they're going to want to connect with you. You're pretty incredible. And where can they go find you? You can tell us how they can find you, but it will be in the show notes. But for those of you who are listening and maybe aren't looking at the show notes, I want them to know where they can find you, Vernon.
Oh, well, thank you again for the opportunity. I do want to say your words really mean a lot to me. They truly do. And thank you for saying that. And knowing just bits and pieces of your story from listening to you on your podcast, like you are just as amazing, if not more. Like I am, when you reached out, when you said, hey, let's connect, I was like, yes, life is good. So this is my happy for the day, by the way. But to connect with me, it's you can email me at vernon@whatsyourhappy.com, and it's happy with an I. Now, before anyone asks, why happy with an I? Why an I? Because you matter. It's my big tagline. But no, I actually do the I. Additional reason is because it wakes you up. If you are having, you're thinking about what are you going to do or whatever else, all of a sudden you see happy with an I, you're like, why would he spell it with an I? Or maybe he did it for that movie. It takes you away from whatever you're thinking about. And also on whatsyourhappy.com. Those are the two fastest ways to get in contact with me.
Well, Vernon, thank you so much for being on this show. I really enjoyed this, and I love that you shared your personal story because sometimes it's hard to share what we've been through, but yet some young person or even older person who's been through that and felt like they never could get away from that and do anything more for themselves is going to hear that and see it's possible. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You are very welcome. It's important to share. And it's, we talk about, tough times, but people need to see it modeled and displayed, not in a way to fawn and awe, but as a teacher, because we all need teachers. We all need people to inspire us to let you know. It's not that my story is the most amazing story, but it's my story. And if it can help someone, I'm all about it. I used to be shy to share it, but now I share it. And I'm just amazed at how many people I had similar things. Wow, you're just like me, and we have so much in common. I've been finding my people that way.
I love it. What's your happy with an I? I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.